Good morning. My name is Anthony Marr, and today I will be informing you on your Miranda rights. So, on November 16th, 1931, Abraham Lincoln stated in the Golden Book magazine that it is better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. This has a lot to do with Miranda rights, even though at this time it had not been established yet. It was better to go ahead and not tell like what you believe or what had happened because then they could later use that in the courts. So going back to the history, Miranda versus Arizona, Ernesto Miranda was being charged with raping women. The case was that a gentleman had uh, kidnapped women in the inside parts of the city and then took them to the outside where nobody could see them. And later on, he raped them. And so after a few days later, the women went in and reported they're being raped. And so Ernesto Miranda had heard that he was the one that they were accusing of it. So he voluntarily came in to talk to the police. During this time, they asked him if he would go into a police lineup, and he said yes. And there was where the women accused him of raping. So they ended up telling him that they identified him. So he later confessed in a writing statement that he had done it. Since he did this and he voluntarily came in, his Miranda rights were not given to him because he had given up his right for his Miranda rights. So the police or the courts were able to um, charge him with the raping. So the police do not always have to read you your Miranda rights if they feel like you're a threat to the public. If you had just robbed a store and they witnessed that, or they witnessed a shooting, they could go ahead and arrest you and get you out of the way. That way, there's no more threat to the public. And then later on, when they decide to interrogate you, they would go ahead and read you your Miranda rights. You also, in most states, it is required that you have to provide your name and address to the police. If you get pulled over at a traffic stop, they will ask you for your identification registration. I've witnessed on many Facebook videos where people decide not to share that information with the police because they are not being arrested. But due to they can as long as they're not certainly specifically going after certain people, if they just have a roadblock set up, then you are required to give your name and address if they ask for it. That way they can identify who you are. One of the scenarios was the Boston bomber. They had caught one of the gentlemen without killing him, but they killed his brother. Uh, so they just went ahead and asked him questions to find out if there was more immediate threat to the public. After 3 hours of interrogation, he was read his Miranda rights and charged with the Boston bombings. So, some amendments that help support the Miranda rights is the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment basically says that you have the right not to self incriminate yourself. This is good because you might say something that you didn't mean to say in front of the police, and or so it was interpreted the wrong way where they could charge you. So, due to the Fifth Amendment, you have the right to plead the Fifth and not self incriminate yourself. The Sixth Amendment is your right to counsel. That way, if you do get charged with something, a criminal crime or something, that you are able to talk to your attorney before having to go in front of the police and get interrogated. That way, you know what to say. Also, the due process is in the Sixth Amendment. This is your legal rights. Every citizen has their own legal rights. So that way, the police can just ask you questions, and then after you consult with your attorney, you can go ahead and provide the information that you had discussed. The Terry stop is whenever they can stop you and pat you down to make sure you don't have no weapons. This goes back to Terry versus Ohio. An undercover detective was staked out just to keep an eye on the public, and he noticed that two gentlemen were walking back and forth past a store, and I kept eyes on them for a few hours, where a third party ended up meeting them, and he wasn't sure what was going on. So he just kept watching and watching, and then he decided to go and stop them and pat them down and make sure everything was okay. When he did this, he found weapons on two of them. He was able to charge them with that, even though he was not able to charge them with robbery of the store. He was still able to get charges against them. So your Miranda rights are that you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do can and will be used against you in the court of law. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you, and then they will ask you if you have any questions. Um, so if they read these rights to you, that means you are being arrested or they're about to interrogate you. You do not have to answer, but you don't have to go into detail with answer, but you do have to tell them what you that you would like to assert your right to counsel. Um, if you do not say anything at all, then that removes your rights. I looked up a case of Burgess versus Tompkins. The gentleman had been charged with a shooting. He did not tell the police that he didn't want to his right to attorney, so he ultimately gave up his rights. And then they asked him, "Do you believe in God?" He said, "Yes." And they said, "Do you pray?" He said, "Yes." And they said, "Do you pray to God to forgive you for the shooting?" And he said, "Yes." So therefore, he was charged with that. So going back to the beginning, basically, if you are being arrested or interrogated, you need to let the police know that you want to assert your right to a counsel and that you don't want to self-incriminate yourself. Thank you.